Hey everybody, it's Josh Rubin, joined by Mark Chin. Today is Friday, December 9th. Welcome back to the Insider. Mark, what do you have for the good people today?
Well, let's start with the Insider Index, which is bouncing around, but still very much in buyer's territory here. We've had a lot of price drops, but less than 30 days ago. We've had a lot of new listings, but less than 30 days ago. We've had some contracts signed, but less than 30 days ago. Basically, activity is slowing down here, but that's kind of what we expect this time of year, right, Josh?
Absolutely, and you see the very close correlation, pretty narrow there, by just a couple percentage points between prices, new inventory, and contracts in terms of the year over year, or I should say 30-day comparison, that is. And at this point, we're at cruising altitude through to the end of the year. We're not seeing much come on in the way of new inventory. In fact, the listings that we've taken in the last couple of weeks, we're really in preparation stage. Getting them touched up with paint and staging and all that stuff. We're able to show them, of course, but just not launching them until after the new year.
Right.
So no surprises there.
Yeah, and if you've got a seller and they're like, well, when should we launch our listing, Josh? And you're like, well, should we do it on Christmas Day? Like, no, don't do it on Christmas Day, right? So you get those people that have that nervousness about around Christmas Day, and they're sort of like deciding to hold off a little bit, and that's sort of natural.
Yeah.
Today, we're going to talk a lot about the state of work from home and how it's going to affect New York City, and some very interesting moves that are being made by some big developers and also the city and the state to promote some commercial to residential conversions. So let's start with this slide, Josh. This is, I'm sorry, not that slide. Let's start with this slide. This is a set of data that comes from Castle Systems. Castle Systems manages the security swipes when you go in and out of Class A buildings. And so they have very precise data on how many people are coming in and out of buildings versus last month, versus last year, et cetera, et cetera. And what you can see is that, we're still only at about a 50% usage compared to pre-COVID times. What are you hearing from people that are clients of yours about work from home, and are they back in the office, Josh?
Well, most people are back in the office now. A lot of investment bankers were able to work from home. Those are, now back in the office Monday through Friday, per company mandates. And, there is definitely renewed interest in spaces to work from home because of acute sensitivity as to, who knows what the future might bring, but they want to have that flexibility.
Yeah.
So a lot of people who were looking for 2 bedrooms are now looking for that third bedroom, or at least a space with which they can set up a home office. But no surprise there that we saw some lower office occupancy, and really what we're talking about is, now that we have this excess capacity as far as commercial space is concerned, what are the bigger landlords going to do with that space?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And so let's look at some other data before we get into that, just about the other data points with respect to this work from home situation, what's going on with the city. So thanks, Charles. This is occupancy over time for 10 major cities. And what you'll see is, this super dramatic drop, obviously, from March of 2020. And personally, I was thinking that work from home was going to be a flash in the pan, and that by now it will be well over. That's just clearly not the case. Let's look at cell phone data. So this is these are data from collected from cell phone towers, and we're looking at the amount of data that was transmitted through these towers in specific locations. So in New York City, you can see we're about fifth down on the chart there. Cell phone data is just 78% of what it was pre-pandemic. And what that tells you is there's just less people here, right? Because even if you're working from home, you're probably on your cell phone a lot. So the fact that the cell phone data is showing down this amount and persistently so suggests there's just less people here. Now let's look at another bit of data. This comes from the MTA. MTA compares specific days versus those days in pre-pandemic times, like 2018, 2019, and this is subway usage data. Subway is like 60% of its former capacity in terms of ridership. So all of this stuff to say there's less people in the city, less people are going in the office, less people are on their cell phones, and it's hitting these office towers pretty hard. And explain why that is, Josh, because I think it's important for our listeners to know.
Well, I think that while there's lower ridership, people are getting around the city via alternative methods, right? You hear about these odd sort of anomalous crimes being committed in the subway, so people have sensitivity with that. People also have sensitivity to getting sick on the subway. So, it would only make sense you'd see ridership a little bit lower. As far as the cell phone data is concerned, that could be read in a couple different ways, right? I mean, you have lower usage, fewer people here, but maybe there's just less need for usage of the data because they're at home on their computers or in the office on their computers or office phones.
Yeah, it could be. One thing that we know for sure is that a lot of corporates of all sizes are giving up their office space. So one of the bright spots in leasing during the pandemic was the tech companies. Amazon in the Hudson Yards doing a bunch of leasing. We saw Facebook leasing 730,000 square feet in Midtown. And, they're starting to give that up. Facebook just decided to give up, I think it was 350,000 square feet that they had previously leased. So, those strong moves showing that perhaps the work from home movement was overblown are now looking maybe not so sure. So looking at the stock prices of some of these big New York City office REITs, and this is just year to date, not even going back to the beginning of the pandemic, but like these guys, their stocks are in the toilet, anywhere from 25% to 80% down. And these companies primarily hold office space in New York City, and you can see that they're just getting hammered. And so what's going on is there's actually quite a lot of demand for housing, as you can see from the prices of rentals, which are hit record numbers this year. Also, there's the prices price per square foot in condos and co-ops really hasn't dropped that much. It goes to show how strong our demand is here. But so there's a mismatch between demand for residential housing and demand for commercial. And so there's a lot of talk about rejiggering a lot of these commercial buildings into residences.
Well, I think the story is really one of supply. It's one that we've been talking about for weeks on the residential side.
Yeah.
It's inventory and coupled with demand, right? So we saw interest rates come down the last couple of weeks. So that's fueled a little bit of a return on the demand side, but we haven't seen really an influx in inventory. Whereas on the commercial side, Mark, you see this huge surge in commercial availability, both in office and retail space. People are being called back to the offices, but those companies behind the offices don't have as much demand as you touched on with the Facebooks and the Amazons, right? Amazon, of course, was supposed to take over this huge campus in Long Island City that AOC put the kibosh on. But Amazon, as I spoke about in a couple of articles that I wrote about 4 years ago when that whole Amazon thing was happening, Amazon still has demand for that type of space in the city. They're just not going to do it on such a concentrated basis in Long Island City. And so what they did is that they actually bailed out WeWork from the Lord and Taylor building as part of WeWork's reorganization. And so, just by the library there on Fifth Avenue, they have this very large commercial building built in the early 20th century, which is a beautiful building. If you walk by there today, there's work being done. Exactly what is going to happen there and what form that's going to take will be interesting. But, then we lead into, okay, what are we actually going to do with this commercial space that there's now surplus of?
Yeah. So the idea, at least the idea, right? Like the reality, we'll see what happens. But the idea is we could convert as a city, right? Like make some moves to convert these older, like not in demand commercial office spaces into residences. There's been quite a lot of that in the financial district. I'm sure you sold a bunch of those, right, Josh?
Absolutely. 15 Broad is one that comes to mind. That was a commercial building for many, many years until it converted about, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
99 John, 80 John. I mean, these are all former commercial buildings that were converted to residential, some more successful than others. But they all did fairly well.
Yeah. I mean, if you happen to get like one of the big corner units at 15 Broad, that's great. But there's a lot of those apartments that are like long and skinny with windows just on one end. You know what I'm saying? And that's because the floor plate wasn't designed for light and air. It was designed for office space, right?
Yeah.
And so it's not a slam dunk that you can convert every one of these buildings. And then there are other issues, right? Like the zoning. A lot of these buildings can't be done as of right. So developers need the city to be a little bit more lax with these zoning regulations so that they can actually do the conversions.
Right.
And also we've got the issue of, the 421A tax abatement is gone and there's nothing to replace it. So I think if the city really wants to make a move towards converting some of these older spaces, which would be very good idea, right? They need to provide some low interest loans to these developers. They need to make zoning a little bit more accommodating. They need to provide a 421A like kind of tax abatement, and hopefully we'll see that happening. I saw that an article saying that Silverstein is raising $1.5 billion to take advantage of this opportunity. So obviously they've got a lot of cash. They're smart. They know New York very, very well. And hopefully we'll see them making some moves in that direction soon.
I mean, these institutional investors are not going to, do foolish things with their portfolios. They are focused on the long term, not just the next 6, 12 months, but we're talking about, 5 or 10 years down the line. And make no mistake about it, the regulatory bodies, both on the state, city, and federal levels, have the tools in order to incentivize both the commercial investors, institutional players, and the developers, as well as the individuals. So, those tax abatements do filter down into the individual buyer and incentivize them to buy things that they might not otherwise buy. Right?
1,000%, yeah. Well, I think that's a wrap in terms of the information that we want to convey to our readership and viewership today. Is there anything else that you want to speak about in particular?
Just aside from the fact that some of those listings that I touched on earlier, we have a 6,000 square foot loft coming on in Soho, mint condition, 3 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, 18-foot ceilings.
Whoa! Beautifully
Renovated. Enormous windows. I mean, it's the stuff when you think of a New York loft, this is the stuff that we think about. And it's really, when you're in this space, it's an absolute dream. We're going to be asking $8 million. The maintenance on that is a tick over $8,000. Don't forget that maintenance in New York is like the HOA and real estate tax equivalent. So it's one number baked in that represents your pro rata share of both. And that's a great Soho location, super quiet, central air conditioning. We also have a penthouse that we just signed up in Tribeca. This is a 3,000 square foot, 3-bedroom penthouse, really nicely renovated. Has a huge kitchen, skylights, lots of light, interesting views, super convenient location. That's a condominium with exceptionally low monthlies. We're going to be asking $4,995 for that. And you can always check out our website, rubenteam.com, for the latest listings that are already online. And we are around and available over the holidays, and look forward to showing these and catching up. Happy holidays, everyone. And Mark and I, we will talk to you soon.